Hi, my name is Rachel Paxton, and today I'm going to show you how to can bean and ham soup. What will you get out of this class? You will learn how to make and can bean and ham soup. I'll lead you through the process step by step. I'll give you the recipe, the canning supply list, and the altitude reference chart you can use to download and print out for future reference. Those are included in your course materials. You will also gain the confidence you need to try more pressure canning recipes on your own. My name is Rachel Paxton. I'm a freelance writer and mom of 5 children, ages 28 to 6. This is me and my husband Dave. We've been married for 20 years, and these are 3 of our children. Zachary and Christian are twins. They're almost 11, and Trenton is 6. We also have 2 daughters that are 28 and 26. I've been canning for more than 20 years, and I am also the owner of the website, creativehomemaking.com. These are the ingredients you need to make bean and ham soup. These ingredients are for quart jars, so if you're going to make pint jars, you want to cut the ingredients in half. You need 3/4 of a cup of dry white beans, such as Great Northern beans or navy beans, 3 tablespoons of ham, a tablespoon of chopped onion, a tablespoon of chopped carrot, a tablespoon of chopped celery, 2 teaspoons of chicken bouillon, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt or liquid smoke. You'll also need a pressure canner, a ladle, a jar lifter, a wide mouth funnel, and pint or quart size canning jars. This is what a pressure canner looks like. There's 2 different kinds of pressure canners, a dial gauge canner and a weighted gauge canner. This is a dial gauge canner, probably the most likely one you'll find. You can order these from Amazon. It's about $75 to buy this size of a canner. And if you're going to get started canning and you don't have any kind of canner, I would recommend getting a pressure canner, because you can use a pressure canner for pressure canning and also for boiling water canning. A boiling water canner is less expensive, but you can only use it for boiling water canning. So if you're going to be doing a lot of canning, you definitely want to invest in a pressure canner. This is a 16-quart variety. You can spend about $100 on a 23-quart one if you want to can more jars at one time. So again, there's a link to this in the supply list in your course materials if you need to look that up on Amazon. This is what a jar lifter looks like. You'll need one of these and also a wide mouth funnel. These are really nice for putting food in jars because they sit in the jars nicely so they don't tip over when you're putting stuff in your jars. The first thing you need to do is sterilize your jars, rings, and lids in the dishwasher. You can reuse jars and rings, but you cannot reuse lids. So if you are reusing your jars, make sure you're using new lids. The first thing you want to do is fill your canner with about 3 inches of water and start it heating to boiling. Next, chop up all your ingredients. I've got my ham and onions and carrots and celery here. The beans you don't need to do anything with ahead of time except for rinse them off and make sure that there's no debris or little rocks or anything in your beans. Next, you want to place about 3/4 of a cup of rinsed beans, again this is for quart jars, into each jar, and then add your remaining ingredients. As you can see, the jar is only half full. You don't want to have more food than this in the jar because the beans will expand a lot while they're cooking and even after you take them out of the canner. So if you have more food than that in there, there won't be enough room in the jar and it could explode. Next, you want to fill the remainder of the jars with boiling water. I have a pan on the stove there with water in it that's boiling. It's important that the water's hot because you're going to be putting the jars into hot water, so you want to make sure it's the same temperature so the jars don't break. You also want to leave 1-inch headspace. The headspace is the amount of space between the top of the food and the top of the jar. It's important to have the right amount of headspace when you're pressure canning because your food will expand while it's being canned, and your jar can explode if there's not enough room left for it to expand. So if you follow the recipe, you won't have any problem with that. Next, you want to wipe the rims of the jar with a damp paper towel or kitchen towel to make sure you get a good seal with your lids. Put your lids and your rings on the jars just finger tight. They don't need to be really tight. and place them in the canner. You'll notice that the water is not covering the jars. When you're boiling water canning, you have your water an inch above the jars, but when you're pressure canning, that does not need to be the case. You start out with about 3 inches, then when you put the jars in, it'll almost cover the jars, but not quite, and that's okay, so don't worry if it doesn't cover the jars. The important thing is that there's enough water in there that the water doesn't boil out during the canning process, and if you started out with 3 to 4 inches of water, you should be fine. And then you want to process your jars for 10 pounds of pressure for 70 minutes for pints or 90 minutes for quarts. This is what your pressure canner looks like. When you put your lid on the canner, there's an arrow on the lid that shows you where to line it up and then turn it to lock it. The first thing you're going to do is have your heat turned up so that the water comes to a boil. You want to take your pressure regulator on the right hand side there off of your vent pipe, and as the water heats up, you'll see steam coming out of the vent pipe. As soon as you see the steam coming out, you want to let the steam vent for about 10 minutes, and then put the pressure regulator back on. And about 5 or 10 minutes later, this pressure will start building up in your pot and the lid lock will pop up, and that's how you know the pressure is building. And the dial on your gauge will also start to move. You want it to get to 10 pounds of pressure. When it starts to get to 10, you want to turn the temperature on your stove way down, because if you don't, the pressure will keep building and it won't stop. And so you want to turn it down between medium, low, and low and watch it, because it will drop down a little bit, but you don't want it to drop below 10. If it does drop below 10, you're going to have to start timing all over again. So adjust your temperature until it stays right at 10 or 11, and then you can set your timer. And after the timer's done, all you need to do is turn the heat off on the stove and let it sit. After 10 or 15 minutes or so, the pressure will release out of the pan, and you'll notice that the lid lock will drop back down again. As soon as the lid lock goes down, that means the pressure has escaped from the pan. And wait about 10 more minutes or so, and then it's safe to open the lid. You want to remove your jars from the canner and put them on the kitchen counter on a towel to cool. Your jars will likely have sealed in the canner, but if not, it can take 10 or 15 minutes for them to seal as they cool. You'll know if the jar has sealed if you press your finger in the middle of the lid. If the lid goes down and up again, that means it is not sealed. It's still okay to eat, but you need to eat it within a week and put it in the refrigerator. The sealed jars will store in a cool, dark place for 1 to 2 years. And another word about your stove: if you have a ceramic stove top, you want to make sure to check with the manufacturer of your stove to make sure that it is safe for pressure canning. Some ceramic stoves are not set up for pressure canning, and the temperature fluctuates when it's trying to regulate its temperature, and so it makes the temperature go up and down, and it can make your pressure go up and down in your canner also. So that makes it very hard to regulate the pressure while you're canning. So you need to be careful canning on a ceramic stove. It is possible to do, but some stove tops could get overheated and crack also, and you don't want that to happen. So make sure that that is safe to do before you try using it on your ceramic stove. I've had much better luck using them on just a regular stove. So just a word of warning about that. I hope you enjoy this recipe. It's one of our family's favorite soup recipes. It's really easy to make. If you have leftover ham, the beans are really inexpensive. I buy them in 25-pound bags really inexpensively at a wholesaler, and so it's just really easy to throw together to have for extra meals when you need something really quick, and it's really inexpensive and really delicious too. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope to see you again soon.